Hello, this video is going over the characteristics of a civilization. Civilizations have basic things in common. They have very different cultures and very different things that make them distinct, but they have about 7 to 8 different. So this one right here, this has 7. They have about 7 characteristics, and sometimes I see 8. I think a couple of them have been combined in this one here. But according to Massachusetts state standards, these are the 7 characteristics of a civilization. So one of the major characteristics of a civilization is that the community or the economy has extra food. All right, so an economy means people that buy and sell or give and take from each other. So that's what that is from. So if you have extra food and have time to do other things than hunting and gathering, then you have the makings of a civilization. So that's one characteristic. So if you have extra food, more than likely you have more people. So another characteristic of a civilization is having a dense population. So when we were talking about hunter-gatherers, we only had about bands or groups of people of 20 to 30. So civilizations, because of the extra food, it was much easier to have higher populations. People could stay in one spot and settle. Before they could not sit. They were constantly on the move. So now they had people that all could sit together in the same area, start up maybe small villages, and then eventually into cities. So a dense population of several families, and then eventually went up to thousands, and then even now in modern day times, millions of people. Also, another characteristic of a civilization is social classes. Social classes change or are different for each different kinds of civilization. So when we talk about the ancient Egyptians, the person at the top was the pharaoh and the slaves were down the bottom. So for every civilization, there will be different social classes, but basically there was someone usually at the very top, like a pharaoh or a king, and then usually the people in the very bottom, and there was usually merchants or farmers in the middle. So each civilization has social classes. Also, every civilization has specialized occupations. Occupation is another fancy word for jobs. So you would have artisans that would be in charge of making the writings on the wall, or creating tombs, or you could have a barber that would cut hair or administer medicine. You would have priests that were pretty much up high on the social stratification that would, try to cure illnesses or do blessings or have ceremonies, and you would have farmers, all different kinds of jobs, teachers, you name it. So every civilization had different occupations, but every civilization does have some kind of all the different kinds of jobs. They didn't just have people hunting and gathering and farming. They had time for scribes and they had time for artists. So there were people who could do other things than just focus on getting food. Also, all civilizations have some kind of infrastructure, laws, rules. Very early on, people started collecting taxes and had some kind of form of government. Depending on the civilization, sometimes either a government was central or a religion was central. So religion was very central in many religions, and they pretty much spent their whole system, or their whole civilization was based upon a belief. So in ancient Egypt, everyone believed that there was an afterlife. And so a lot of times the economy or people were spending most of their time getting their pharaoh ready for the afterlife. They were constantly building tombs and getting things ready for the tombs. And that was because their religion or their belief was that their pharaoh or their overseer, their higher up person that they were underneath, because like there was pharaohs and all sorts of very important people. It wasn't just the pharaoh that was buried, obviously, but that was their whole civilization was based upon that belief. So it was a big thing that always took a lot of their energy. Also, all civilizations have some kind of achievement in technology. So we could say for the Egyptians, their building, their mummification, lots of advancements, their art, their monuments. So that's a great example. So we all know about the pyramids and the Sphinx in ancient Egypt. So that is another really good example. So all civilizations have some kind of achievement or monument or art. And lastly, most civilizations have some kind of system of record keeping or some kind of oral written or some kind of oral or storytelling or some kind of historical documentation of what happened in their civilization. So we're going to be going over the different kinds of systems of record keeping. Egyptians, obviously, they had hieroglyphics, and we can tell a lot about their civilization from everything they wrote down. But all kind of civilizations have some kind of evidence of their day-to-day life. So these are the characteristics of a civilization. I also just want to go with you. How did civilizations interact? So when we talk about these civilizations, a lot of them overlapped and definitely they worked together, and they did something called trade. Trade is, we still do trading today. So basically, if the ancient Egyptians had, papyrus, and let's say the ancient Ethiopians had, wood or salt or gold, people would be trading all the time. So people with totally different backgrounds would be interacting with each other all the time for trade. And because of this, because of trade was the major thing, is because, getting things that you need from other people that have extra. But a lot of times cultural or linguistic means languages would change. So if we look back, especially in ancient Egypt, when archaeologists are looking back, especially in major cities of like Alexandria and Cairo, people are finding evidence of Greek and African exchanges all the time, finding things from Africa, finding things from Greece. Like silver was from Greece, and so people were making exchanges and talking and learning from each other all the time. But the main drive was trade, because people needed to get what they had. There was no Walmart where they could just go to the store and get what they needed. If they needed timber or if they needed a precious metal or anything like that, they would have to go and search for it, and a lot of times deal with people from other civilizations and cultures. Also, if there was ever a drought or some kind of natural disaster, people would interact with each other because of migration. If you were forced to move, people would be moving in and out of civilizations all the time. Especially for ancient Egypt and even Mesopotamia, we can find evidence of people moving from other areas of the planet from their artifacts. So people would just move maybe because of natural disasters, or just because they need a better life, or they might be migrating to the civilization to have a better life. Also, civilizations can interact with each other with religious conversion, and that's something that happens. You'll probably talk more about 7th grade, and a little bit at the end of just making sure that we'll be talking about the spread of Islam and things like that. So sometimes religion can spread and have civilizations interact with that. Sometimes with conquests, like when you talk about the Greek and Romans, eventually, and again, the Islamic culture, they basically would conquest or take over an area. And usually it was peaceful, but sometimes it wasn't. And they would take over an area, and they would be pledged allegiance to a particular civilization. And also colonization. So this was a big one. So especially when we're dealing with Asia and Africa. So many of the European countries colonized parts of Africa and in Asia, and we're still reeling from the effects today. Colonization is basically someone coming from another country and taking over because they're more powerful. It's kind of similar with conquests. So colonization was more dealing with a more modern name for conquest. But all of these ways are how civilizations interact, and we're going to be talking more about that. So as we go through the year. And just to know that people, when we're talking about the Egyptians, when we're talking about the Babylonians and the Assyrians and the Sumerians, they did not live in a vacuum, or they didn't live all by themselves. They were dealing with people from all over the planet, and in all different sorts of different ways, just like we are in modern day times. They didn't have FaceTime, or they didn't have Facebook or social media, but they had trade, and they had many other reasons to interact with each other.